Welcome to Philosophy15. I'm Scott Aikin.
And I'm Robert Talisse.
We're picking up the thread from the previous episode on civility and the Owl of Minerva problem. So, setting up, we had talked about how the Owl of Minerva problem comes about, and in particular how it's a pressing problem in cases where we have to discuss matters of import with each other as equals. So how exactly do we get the Owl of Minerva problem with the concept of civility in particular?
So remember, the problem has to do with the way in which our disagreements about the terms and policies and actions that have to do with the shaping of our shared social and political life. These disagreements have to be conducted in a particular way if they are to be consistent with our shared ethos of political equality. And so we need a set of concepts by which we can sort of hit the pause button on the disagreement about, say, immigration, and then say, hey, wait, what you just said there wasn't really fair, right?
Right.
We get the problem because then these concepts, these second-order concepts by which we evaluate and try to manage and regulate each other's performance in the first-order disagreements that we're having, can then get deployed at the first order as just a new way to impugn an interlocutor, call a new name to call the person you disagree with, a new way to try to dismiss objections. So, civility is obviously, let's say, a term, a concept that aspires to this second-order status.
Yeah, it
right?
means that you've been enculturated. You're not only aware of the norms, you can enforce the norms. That mean you're another citizen, right?
That's right.
You're part of this polis. You're part of this civitas, right?
That's right. And so when we talk about disagreement or discourse or commentary or speech acts, whatever the target is, when we assess that as civil or uncivil, we are supposed to be appealing to a concept that is neutral on the partisan issues.
Right.
Right? If civility is a concept that's worth admitting into our political vernacular, it must be the case that the people you agree with can be, or can have episodes of, or can articulate what you think the right view is in an uncivil way, right?
Yeah, it's got to be minimally content neutral.
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
Yeah, so
it must be that, civility is not just what you say when somebody says something that you agree with.
Right.
Just like it must be the case that people who you have real disagreements with, nonetheless, can express that view, which from your perspective is obviously false, mad, out of bounds, within limits, all the rest. There must be a way to articulate serious political error by your lights in a way that's civil. So civility looks like it's kind of built for, right, this second-order evaluative work, right? We can say, look, we disagree about immigration, and I think your view about immigration is problematic, false, seriously mistaken, deeply messed up, yada, 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 and then say, but your articulations have been civil.
And on the flip side of it, it looks like the folks that you agree with, that people who are on the side of justice, people who are on the side of the rights that you think are right, and all that, and things like that, you've got to think you've got to think that it's conceptually possible for those people who are on the side of the angels nevertheless act like devils whenever defending those things, and so they can be right but be uncivil.
That's right.
So that's what we mean by content neutral, that like you can be wrong but still civil and be right about the substantive issue but nevertheless be uncivil.
That's right. So now the question is, what's the content of the concept, right? So civility has to be content neutral with respect to the political issues over which we are divided, and it has to be content neutral in that way so that it can play this regulatory, conduct guiding role function. But then we've got to populate the content of that concept. So what do we mean by civility? Now here's the worry, right?
Yeah.
The worry is that it's going to be all too easy in thinking about what civility is to kind of cook the books.
Right.
So that...
Because in cases where we've got significant political disagreement, where we say, look, we have to treat each other as equals. Well, equality is one of the things that we disagree about on the first order.
Right. Well, what equality it means, right? We're not supposed to, right?
We've got a lot of instances where we're like, that's equal treatment. They're like, that's equal treatment.
That's right.
So, okay.
That's right. So surely one way that civility will fail, it seems to me, as a concept and not be able to play any useful regulatory role, is if we associate civility with one's demeanor in disagreement, right? So if by civility we just mean the ability to be calm, collected, that you don't raise your voice, that you maintain a posture of a kind of concessiveness. If that's what we mean by civility, then I think that civility is not playing a regulatory role. Civility is not second order, because it looks like the demands of civility actually just privilege the status quo.
That's right.
Right?
That's exactly. It's it turns out that being a critic is rude. So
that's exactly right.
Done.
And what could be better for the people who like things just as they are?
Right.
For civility in that sense to be a norm of discourse,
right,
so that it looks like any objection that has a serious critical edge, any way of protesting that is that is rowdy, looks like it's going to be criticizable as uncivil, therefore dismissible as a proper contribution to civic discourse or public discourse. And so civility that is understood as a kind of calm and cool demeanor amidst debate is a privileging of the status quo. So that can't be what civility is. Good. Now here's the problem on the other side, though. Neither can it be sufficient for civility for the person to be speaking truth to power. Right? That is, we don't want a concept of civility that privileges the status quo for those very same reasons. We can't tether our concept of civility simply to our conception, as well-grounded as it may be, to our conception of what truth and justice require
because
of us
that just
politically.
means civility just means being right.
Yes, and what could be more obviously not second order,
right? than that.
than that. So that's the puzzle. How to populate, or how to sort of fill in the content of the concept of civility in a way that doesn't make it simply just another partisan tool.
And notice, let's pause for just a moment and say, notice that those two errors with civility are very prevalent errors with civility. And it happens on both sides that, no, we're the nice ones.
Right.
Right? We're the nice ones seems to be one of the sort of the defenses against the incivility charge. No, we're the ones who are nice. The second charge, which is, no, we're the ones speaking truth to power, both sides take that strategy too. Both sides try to portray the other side as, no, you're the ones who are just the power-hungry, power-mongers,
elites.
Right? The elites, on both sides, right? And so again, this is an instance where the tempting elements of the charges of incivility and the claiming of the cloak of civility create these illusions that are really easy and tempting for any of the sides that happen with regards to it. And so what's really important is that in clarifying civility, we also need to clarify what it's not, because those kinds of temptations are ones that create more illusions than are really tolerable.
Right, and so you can now see also how this is an instance of the Owl of Minerva problem, right? Civility looked like it was tailor-made, the concept looked like it was tailor-made to play this second-order evaluative regulatory role with respect to our very serious, sometimes severe and heated disputes at the first order. Then it looks like civility now gets deployed in a way that just makes it another move in those first order debates.
Yep.
It's just another way of saying the other side's out of bounds because of what the other side stands for. Right? Good.
And on top of all this, even the ways that even if we concede that maybe civility could entail that one has a harsh tone, but if we concede that, but we think that they use the harsh tone for something that we disagree with, we think that their harsh tone is revelatory of something deeply uncivil.
That's right.
So you'd say something like, "Look, if you agree with a kind of a more forceful objection, you don't see the sort of the temptation of the other side to see it as a deeply uncivil kind of challenge.
That's right.
Because you see somebody raising their voice in a significant disagreement, and you say, whenever you're on their side, they're like, that's what somebody standing up for justice does, right? But then if you're somebody who disagrees with them, you're like, yeah, that's what somebody who's deeply wrong does. They raise their voice instead of give good reasons.
Yeah, right.
And so the sort of the you might call it the hermeneutics of the suspicion of all of the non-argumentative elements would get ramped up. In fact, that may be a reason why, like, some of this civility talk is usually more accusatory than actually helpful.
That's right. So let's say this much: whatever civility is going to be properly now, right? It's got to be that associated with that set of dispositions or attitudes, however we want to characterize the virtues, right? Civility is going to be a virtue, whether a disposition, a habit, an attitude, maybe all three of those things in various ways, that enables those who disagree severely and heatedly at the first order to nonetheless conduct themselves in a way that actually is addressed, so that their arguments are actually addressed to one another. That's what civility, whatever it is, that's what it has to be.
And this is a nice observation, because it's not just about just the speaker.
Right.
It's about, because one of the crucial things is that civility norms are reciprocal norms. They're ones about us being able to sort of effectively engage with each other. And so there may be a contextual element and things like that. And so in some cases, raising your voice with another may be heard appropriately as, now we're really getting to the heart of the matter, and we're right, like, yeah, you pushed my button, and we're gonna, right? This is a place where we're gonna be talking for real, arguing for real. Other cases where the yelling is going to be a way of shutting the other side down and talking over them. And so the way of seeing the sort of the civility norms are really in terms of how they are supposed to be ways of managing the disagreement so that the sides can be heard and the reasons addressed.
That's right. And too often, I take it, right, civility is also this sort of, it's part of this, charges of incivility are part of this sort of dialectical fallacy stuff. So I say of my interlocutors, my political adversaries, look at how uncivil they are. When I say that, I'm not really, I might be in some sort of purely surfacey way, I might be addressing, or I might be talking to the interlocutors. But more often, charges of incivility are really signals to the people who already agree with me, who are looking on.
Right.
It's a further way. Charges of incivility, just like charges of civility, are a way of signaling to an onlooking audience and giving them cues as to where they should stand relative to the particular exchange.
Right.
That is to say, civility understood in that, deployed in that way, actually gets in the way, is actually an obstruction to real democratic disagreement among political equals.
Yeah, the owl's flown on that one.
Yeah, that's nice. It's Philosophy 15, folks. See you next time. Thanks.